this program, which is a SportsWave education, coaches education program. Our topic today is on nutrition, recovery, and rehabilitation in sports, as you can see. And our presenter is Ms. Purity Kamande, who will be taking us through this presentation today. So please allow me to welcome Purity to give a presentation. And thank you and welcome all.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope I am clear enough for everyone to hear me. So we will be covering nutrition in recovery and rehabilitation in sports for this particular session. And as we know, when it comes to sports and injuries, they almost go hand in hand, as much as it is not something we would want to happen. But injuries are part and parcel of what we go through anytime we are encountering or we are engaging in sports. So the nature and severity of injury will usually dictate the recovery and rehabilitation time and sport-specific protocol, because various sports will have different... Yes, thank you. So sorry about that technical hitch. So we were at introduction and I was saying that the nature and severity of injuries is usually dictates how much time it will take an athlete, especially with regards to protocol that surround sports. Every particular sport will have its own protocol when it comes to injury, out of play, out of training protocol. And usually these injuries will usually result in loss of muscle mass, loss of muscle strength and function, and usually most of the time because an athlete is not actively in training or engaging in any type of exercise, it could lead to unintentional weight gain. So with that, then good nutrition will accelerate recovery, making it faster, making it even quality recovery. Well, you'll find that poor nutrition practices again will delay and impede return to training and in the end return to play. Next slide. So with that, then what are our goals when it comes to recovery? What are our goals with regard to nutrition in recovery and rehabilitation? One, that is that we need to prevent and minimize loss of muscle, tissue, and function. We want to try and keep the muscle intact as much as possible and keep muscle function to an optimum even during this time of recovery and rehabilitation. The other one would be to preserve lean body and bone mass, especially during this point when one is not engaging in any exercise, when one is not engaging in any training, when one is not engaging in any type of sport or competition. We want to try and preserve as much lean body mass and bone mass as possible. Other one would be to prevent excessive weight gain and fat accrual during rehabilitation. We want to try and maintain body composition for the athlete that was there prior to the injury and keep it at that. Then the other one would try and minimize time spent away from training, even with the sport-specific protocols of various injuries. We want to try and keep recovery within the shortest time period as possible. The other one would be, again, to maintain energy production that goes hand in hand with recovery, to protect the immunity of the athlete because of the health status of the athlete, which needs to be optimum to enhance recovery. Also, manage inflammation following injury. With injury comes a lot of inflammation. We want to try and keep it to as low as possible. And the other one would be to maintain physical and mental health. So with that in mind, then, what are the nutrition strategies for reducing injury? One is that you need to ensure that your athlete is able to be on a good kind of dietary plan, a good nutrition plan, even within active sports. And we start reducing injury, or the time frame in which we start reducing injury starts even when they are still in training, before the injury happens. And this will find that even, for example, after a training session, we usually have a window period of between 30 minutes to 2 hours in which an athlete needs to be able to take in a post-training or a post-match or a post-competition meal to be able to replenish what they have used up during the activity. So with this, then they need to be able to take in adequate vitamin C intake, which should be coupled with collagen, which increases collagen synthesis, tendon and ligament repair. We know that even during training, sometimes it could happen that an athlete could end up tearing their tendon, tearing their ligament. So adequate vitamin C intake from the diet then will be able to increase this, and thus reducing the risk of tendon and ligament tears. Vitamin D and calcium will reduce the risk of stress fractures, especially among female athletes. You will find that especially also you need to be able to, through the diet, vitamin D and calcium as well go hand in hand. So stress fractures need to be kept to a minimum as much as possible. Magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, and fluoride also come in to complement vitamin D and calcium when it comes to supporting bone health. You will also find that adequate carbohydrate intake provides the body with the energy and the fuel for any activity, and in turn will reduce negative effects that usually come in with low energy availability from the diet. So this has to do with the macronutrients, whereby carbohydrate is the first line of energy for any particular activity. So we need to make sure that our athletes are having adequate intake of this as well. Protein, also another macronutrient, very key, helps with muscle strength and growth, and also helps in tissue repair, especially after training, after an activity. We know that protein muscles from time to time will be broken down, and in turn then protein comes in to help with repairing the same muscle and also providing muscle strength and growth. Essential fats are another one. They usually keep the bones, ligaments, and tendons lubricated, making movement easier, another part of the macronutrients. So we have the carbohydrates, protein, and fats forming the macronutrients that we need to ensure that our athletes are consuming as well. Vitamin E, also an antioxidant, which comes in to protect the tissue and organs from damage from environmental kind of stresses, and also internally from oxidation stresses that happen within various processes within the body. So let's look at now when it comes to recovering from an injury. What do we do, or what do we need to do, or what is it that we need to pay particular attention when it comes to recovery? Next slide, please. So we will be able to look at some of the nutrients that are very key when it comes to recovery for an athlete. Just go back. Okay, might have gotten mixed up. So the role of protein in recovery cannot be emphasized enough. Protein is a very key nutrient when it comes to making sure that an athlete is able to recover from the injury that they have gotten during play, during training, during competition. So what does protein come in to do for the athlete during recovery? One is that it will minimize loss of muscle mass, and again, it will minimize loss of muscle strength. Even when an athlete is not engaging in any particular kind of activity, then protein is able to do this. Protein again will help in healing and repairing muscle tissue and bones that have been affected during the injury, that have been affected during training. Protein will be able to do this. So you will find that in the process or during the rehabilitation phase, protein requirements will usually increase depending on the stage of injury and up to the point where the athlete is now coming from injury to returning to training. So the recommendation currently starts from 1.2 to 2 grams per kg body weight during active training, while during rehab and recovery, it increases up to 2 to 2.5 grams per kg body weight to be able to take care of the increased needs of the body during injury. And with that, then we have various food sources in which you can be able to easily get this particular recommended daily allowance, where we have the lean meats from fish, for tofu for our vegetarian athletes, eggs as well, Dairy foods pack a lot of protein in them. Seeds and nuts, legumes, pulses, including beans, green grams, peas, all types of beans would be able to provide the athlete with this. And it is usually recommended to do a balance between the plant sources of protein and the animal sources of protein, so that the athlete could be able to get the benefits from all or the variety of protein sources that they are. Then with that, let's look at the role of carbohydrates and fats in recovery. Next slide. So we are paying particular attention to the macros in this particular case, the ones that we need to eat more of. We need to be able to emphasize this for our athletes. So carbohydrates being the first line of energy, being the first line of fueling activity within the body, will be able to provide energy and fuel. And usually with this, then carbohydrate will aid the usage of protein within the body. And we have gotten to see why protein is particularly important during injury. And it will then be able to aid the healing and repair of the muscles in this particular case. So simultaneous carbohydrate intake with protein will be able to inhibit the breakdown of muscle and atrophy. In that, if you are taking a meal that has both carbohydrate and has both protein, it will be able to ensure that muscle health is maintained. It will be able to ensure that muscle strength is maintained, and will also ensure that the muscle cells in this case are not dying off as a result of disuse. So simultaneous carbohydrate and protein intake is usually able to take care of this. Then carbohydrate intake will vary on activity level and recovery needs. So we know that from various activities, depending on the training load, depending on the kind of sport, that would be able to advise us on what we take when it comes to carbohydrate. But during recovery, a range of between 3 to 5 grams per kg body weight daily is recommended for carbohydrates. And we get these carbohydrates from our cereals, our green bananas, our ugali, our chapati. All those are able to provide us with the carbohydrates that we are able to need during recovery. Fats is another macronutrient that is able to play a key role when it comes to recovery. And I know most athletes, especially those that take part in weight-sensitive sports and aesthetic sports, will usually shy away from fats. But we try and not demonize fats, as they play a very key role. When you are talking about reducing inflammation in the body, good fats will be able to reduce inflammation, and this in turn will be able to hasten recovery. Also, fats are very key when it comes to cell membrane production, immune support, and we have mentioned quite earlier that the immunity of an athlete needs to be at its peak, especially during recovery. Also, fat helps with avoiding fatigue, and fat will also be very key when it comes to the absorption of key antioxidants. For example, our fat-soluble vitamins. This is vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and K, which are vitamins that require the presence of fat to be able to be taken in the body. And during recovery, as we have seen with the other macronutrients, the needs for fat will also increase. And at this point, we are recommending 0.8 to 2 grams per kg body weight of healthy fat to be taken on a daily. And food sources of these fats include your chia seeds, your sesame seeds, flax seeds, and oils derived from the same, your avocado, your olive and coconut oil, your beef tallow. All those are able to provide the body with the fat requirements that it needs. So with that, let's now look at other nutrients that are quite important for recovery. We've gotten to see what protein does. We've gotten to see what carbohydrate does. We've gotten to see what fats do. So with that, we are now looking at other important nutrients in recovery. So other important nutrients when it comes to recovery. So it's not only protein, carbohydrates, and fats that play a key role when it comes to recovery. We also need to be able to input the micronutrients, which involve our vitamins, which involve our minerals and fiber as well. So with that, then fiber will usually regulate regular bowel function and gut health. You know that if the gut is not healthy, then most of the processes in the body will be lagging behind. We usually term the brain, the gut as the second brain of the body. So we need to be able to ensure that the gut health is maintained optimally into a state where it can be able to function with no issues at all. So with this, fiber will also help with clearing toxins and limiting weight gain. Very key component, especially when it comes to weight management. Fiber plays a very key role as it keeps one, it brings about satiety for a long period of time, keeps one fuller for longer when it comes to the intake of fiber. So food sources of fiber will include whole grains, your vegetables, your fruits, and your legumes. Also, when it comes to another key component when it comes to recovery is anti-inflammatory foods. We know with injury, inflammation is usually there. And with that, then we want to be able to encourage the intake of anti-inflammatory foods, which are able to provide antioxidants, which fight oxidational processes in the body. Also will be able to provide immune support to the athlete. Also, these food sources pack a lot of fiber, pack a lot of vitamins and minerals, and they include ginger, your cinnamon, your turmeric, carrots, apples, celery, pineapples, and spinach, among others, which are very key sources of antioxidants. Also, you'll find that natural occurring nitrates usually find in protein sources usually will be able to convert to what we are calling nitric acid, which usually will act as a vasodilator, which in turn is opening the blood vessels, allowing more blood and oxygen to the muscle and encouraging recovery of the injured muscle. So food sources of these nitrates include green leafy vegetables, beetroot, garlic, onions, apples, bananas, and pears. Next slide, please. So also in continuation of other important nutrients in recovery, we have zinc, and zinc will be able to aid in maintaining a functional immune system even during recovery, and with this then aid in ensuring there is repair of injuries and repair and healing of wounds. Iron is another key component when it comes to recovery, which usually will help the body in production of red blood cells, encouraging oxygenation of various muscles, and in turn encouraging and speeding up recovery. Food sources of iron include red meat, organ meats like liver, kidney, eggs, and fish. So need to encourage your athlete during injury to have a variety of various foods to be able to ensure that they are able to get all that comes with the quality of food and all that comes with the nutrients found in the various foods as we've gotten to see. So what is it that we need to avoid or reduce during injury? Next slide. So saturated and trans fats, especially coming from very fatty foods, foods that have been deep fried, processed foods that have gone through so many processes, so much preservatives, deli meats, fried fruits, snacks, and junk food need to be kept to a minimum, because with such foods also they usually come high in oxidants, and which are not optimal for injury and which are not optimal for recovery. So we try and keep those to a minimum or try and avoid them totally. Sugary processed foods such as your cakes, your sweets, your pastries, your biscuits, and low fiber breakfast cereals need to be kept to a minimum, as they usually elevate glucose levels. And when glucose levels are very high, then you'll find that they trigger inflammation, which is not something we need happening during recovery, as we need to keep inflammation to as low as possible. Alcohol intake during injury, during rehabilitation is discouraged, because with what alcohol does, one, alcohol causes dehydration, which is something we need to try and steer off during injury. We want the athlete to be as properly hydrated as possible, and with alcohol intake, then there will be dehydration, making the process of recovery longer than we need it to be. So this alcohol impedes healing and will exacerbate. It will make muscle loss. It will increase muscle loss during immobilization, during the period that the athlete is not taking part in any particular activity, is not taking part in training, is not taking part in competition. Because of the disuse, then there'll be a lot of muscle loss, especially if the athlete is taking alcohol during this period. So with that, then we need also to consider the role of supplementation in rehabilitation. So what are some of the supplements that are recommended during this period? And with that, I will need to give a disclaimer. There's a risk of contamination that should always be considered by athletes as governed as by the WADA code. We know currently what is happening with doping. We know currently what is happening with contamination of so many supplements that athletes are using. So use of supplements should stand guided either by a nutritionist or by a physician to be able to know what is acceptable, to be able to know what is right for the athlete to be able to take. And with this, then we have the whey protein. Whey protein usually comes in as a low energy source of protein during the disuse period. We want to try and keep energy intake within what is allowed, not too high again to encourage weight gain, to encourage to try and discourage weight gain, sorry about that, and also to try and ensure that body composition of the athlete that was there prior to injury is maintained. So whey protein is a good source of this. Omega-3 fatty acids usually will come to be able to ensure that anabolic resistance is kept to a minimum, and also ensuring that inflammation is kept to a minimum. Arginine are usually an amino acid that is found in protein sources, usually will play a key role when it comes to healing of wounds. Collagen plays a key role when it comes to the regeneration and repair of tissues, which is including the bones, tendons, and ligaments, which are usually mostly affected during injury in sports. Leucine, another amino acid found in protein sources, will be able to stimulate protein synthesis in muscle, and thus encouraging recovery of various muscles that have been affected. Boron, usually a micronutrient, this is a mineral, will be able to promote bone health by increasing the retention of calcium and magnesium, and also enhancing the effect of vitamin D, which we saw are very key when it comes to ensuring that bone health is maintained. And with that, then marks the end of my presentation. So allow me to take any questions or any concerns that you might have seen during the presentation.
John?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When talking about fats, it was mentioned, I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much, first of all. You mentioned that good fats reduce inflammation, which slows down recovery. I wasn't real clear on that, and I also wanted to know what are the good fats?
Okay.
But would
So
reduction,
what's
would that slow down recovery by reducing inflammation?
What that point basically meant is inflammation is what slows down recovery. So with the intake of good fats, then we are able to slow down inflammation or reduce inflammation. So when we are talking about good fats, we are basically talking about unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats which are high in what we want, which are high in what we refer to as a good cholesterol. And that will be now where we're giving examples of the chia seeds, your sesame seeds, your flax seeds. You are basically steering away from fats which will usually come in with the bad cholesterol. We are steering away from deep fried kind of foods. We are steering away from fats that are not healthy for the body, that when taken will end up causing a lot of issues. So that's why we're steering towards olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. Beef tallow is also a good source of good fats. and would be able to also, when you're taking in your meat, steer towards lean kind of cuts of meat compared to those that are very high in fats, then you'll be able to get your good fats from that. I hope that is clear.
Yeah, that's very clear. Thank you. Could I ask also, what is, I know in Ghana, I think it's palm oil is the most popular oil used. What's the most common and popular oil used for cooking in Kenya?
Mostly it's corn oil. And
Yeah.
yes, mostly most people use corn oil here in Kenya.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you.
Any other concern? Guys are so quiet.
I have a question, John.
Yes, kindly proceed.
I'm struggling. I'm using a phone for this meeting. I mean, a little bit. This is more on performance. I know there's a huge correlation between the eustress and performance versus the distress is about the stress. Are there foods that trigger the good stress, and there are foods that trigger the bad stress? And I mean, the likes of cortisol and that kind of stuff. I'm asking this more so during competition. This can guide what kind of meals should athlete eat during competitions. Yeah, as far as the stress level, the good stress levels are concerned for optimal performance.
Okay. Thank you so much for your question, Coach. When it comes to bad and good stress, this is where now the hormones are usually coming in. So we know the disadvantage of excessive cortisol when it comes to performance. So when we are steering away from excessive cortisol production in the body, then we would encourage that the athlete stays away from highly processed foods and opts for whole grain kind of foods. Highly processed foods, very deep fried kind of foods usually will trigger excessive cortisol production, and that as well will end up having bad stress in the body. So we encourage a lot of whole grains, a lot of veg and fruit intake, which usually come with the antioxidants that are able to take care of the oxidative stress, which also will hinder performance. So a lot of antioxidant consumption coming from fruits, coming from leafy green vegetables, coming from whole grains, coming from pulses such as your beans, your green grams, and all that, are able to encourage the good stress kind of production, which in turn will be able to enhance performance. I hope your question is answered.
Yeah, I lost you at some point, but
I think then we'd be able to talk more about this maybe after the session, and I could guide you on what to do in regards to that.
For the benefit of the whole group, if you don't mind, you can just briefly restate what you said.
Okay, let me just restate.
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying that when it comes to oxidative stress, or the good and the bad stress, especially when it comes to performance, it is recommended that athletes stay away from highly refined foods, highly processed foods, deep fried kind of foods, which will usually trigger the body to release excessive cortisol. And with excessive cortisol, then performance is usually hampered. So to take care of this particular issue, it is recommended that the dietary intake of an athlete is key and is rich in antioxidants. Antioxidants will be able to take care of the oxidative stress that comes in during excessive cortisol production. So you will be able to encourage your athlete to eat a lot of whole grains kind of foods, to be able to encourage them to eat pulses and grains and cereals, your beans, your green grams, your peas, your black beans, your legumes, all that, your green leafy vegetables and fruits, which pack a lot of antioxidants that will be able to reduce the oxidative stress in the body, and in turn enhancing performance. I hope that is now clear.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll follow up to that, Purity.
Yes.
Does it mean different injuries require different foods, or if one maintains a good balanced diet, he or she can be able to manage any injury in terms of nutrition and rehabilitation?
Okay. So yes, some injuries would require a bit of an adjusted kind of nutrient, an adjusted kind of dietary plan. If you're looking at things like traumatic brain injuries, concussions, you would want to have a diet that has more of omega-3s, that has more of brain healthy kind of food. If you're looking at injuries that are involving the muscle, that are involving the bones, you would want a diet that is rich in calcium, that is rich in protein, that is rich in magnesium and potassium, which usually will promote muscle and bone health. So with different injuries, it's just about tweaking the various nutrients to be able to ensure that you have optimum results during recovery.
Thank you. Any other
John,
concern?
I have a question.
Yes,
John,
kindly.
I have a question. About the alcohol and the relationship between the alcohol and also the recovery during the injuries and the workouts. Does it mean that less fluids being in the cells encourages less healing of the injuries that have occurred? Let's say water, because once it's more dry or more dehydrated, it seems to be slowing down the process of healing. Does it mean that is the issue, or maybe unless it is accompanied by nutritive part of eating?
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Yes, dehydration slows down recovery. And this is why we encourage our athletes to take a lot of water and sports drinks that have been allowed, to be able to ensure that they're not going into a state of dehydration. Even during training, we try and ensure that after training, during the competition, your athlete is able to stay within an optimal hydration level, because if one is dehydrated, then it poses a risk to them to be able to get more injuries. And even during injury now, again, if they are dehydrated, if they're not maintaining their hydration levels, if the cells and muscles are not well hydrated, if the tendons and ligaments are not well hydrated, then the process of recovery will be prolonged. The process of healing will be slowed down. And that's why we are trying to discourage alcohol and any other substance that would cause dehydration, because this will also slow down recovery. And also with alcohol intake during injury, it increases muscle loss and muscle strength. So that's why we are encouraging athletes to stay clear of alcohol during injury and rehabilitation. I hope your question is answered.
Yeah, thank you very much. The presentation was good. You have answered it so well. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Any more concern? Purity, now what would you do with the people who prefer to take alcohol as a painkiller?
Well, with alcohol intake, especially during recovery and rehabilitation, it's more of something we don't, because again, with alcohol, then during recovery and rehabilitation, it would interfere if one would be on any kind of medication. Alcohol most of the time will inhibit certain drugs from being taken by the body. Certain painkillers don't go even hand in hand with alcohol. So if one can steer clear of it, the better, because it will only be making it worse. I know for most athletes, especially those who find themselves in a position where they are out of play, they're out of training for long periods of time, alcohol has been found as one of the coping methods. However, we try and discourage it as much as possible. And then for athletes who find that they now cannot do without alcohol during this period, then now it will now need the need of an intervention from a sports psychologist to be able to address such issues.
Most people relapse to alcohol when they are in pain.
Yes, that's true.
Because lack of activity or commitments, they tend to, befriend alcohol more than anything else. But it's good that you've highlighted and we've understood the reason why it's not advisable at any given time. And that would include even these other substances that people for shortcut to relieve their pain.
Yes.
Right.
John, I have another question.
Kindly proceed.
Purity, could there be a situation whereby the nutrients, some of the nutrients maybe, or some of the supplements might dehydrate the cells, and then they also impact injuries? Let's say supplements like maybe creatine or any other that maybe might dehydrate the cells to increase injury. Could there be?
Yes, they are supplements that during intake would require one to be on a lot of hydration. An example of this is creatine monohydrate. Creatine has been found out to use up a lot of water in the body. That's why anyone who's taking creatine as part of their routine is usually encouraged to take a lot of water because of the action of creatine on the cells. Another one would be caffeine. Caffeine is another supplement. Maybe if you're supplementing or using it as part of your regimen, also has been found to dehydrate the cells. That's why for these two, yes, especially like creatine, yes, it contributes to recovery, but one has to be ensuring that their hydration is optimum so that it does not work inverse, whereby, yes, we are taking it for muscle strength, but on the other side, it's causing dehydration, so there will be an inverse effect. So with caffeine and creatine monohydrate intake, then a lot of hydration needs to be ensured to ensure that one is not going into a state of dehydration while taking that too.
So it also means even the energy drinks that contain the caffeine and everything also have an impact?
Yes, they do have an impact. That's why even in normal training, we usually try and discourage them because of the effect of dehydration that they have on the cell. Unless it's a last minute, try steering clear of high caffeinated drinks because of the effect of dehydration that they have on the body.
Okay, that's good. Is it that it only has to be water alone that maybe can supplement that, or any other liquid maybe can also help in rigidity of the cells? Does it mean it's only water?
No, it's not only water. There are also other sports drinks that come with components of carbohydrates, come with components of various micronutrients that can also be used to be able to ensure that one is well hydrated, especially for the athletes. We are now moving to whereby we are balancing between water and sports drinks. Also, any other fluid intake, your tea, your juices, at the end of the day will contribute to your hydration levels. So if one is able to be at their optimal in taking all these fluids, then they will be good to go.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've answered it well. Thank you.
Any other concern? Anyone who needs anything to be clarified or anything on nutrition? If none, I think then we'll get to the end of this. You can have charities contacts in case you need to reach her on any other question or on further clarification of what she's presented. Without further ado, just have to take this opportunity to thank Purity for making time to present to us and share our knowledge, which I believe has been very helpful and insightful in terms of injury and nutrition, injury and rehabilitation management. Otherwise, on my side, I don't have much, unless Purity, you have something to say before we can, or any other participant, before we can bring this to a close. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. So I hope that at least everyone has gotten something they have learned from this presentation. And in case anyone would have a rejoinder, they can be able to reach me from what has been projected. Then we can carry on the conversation. From me, it's just to thank you everyone for taking the time to attend this particular session. Thank you.
Yeah, to Purity, I know sports nutrition has got a huge gap and very little literature to help coaches, organizations. I'm wondering if you can come up with a program where, from a very basic level, that we some information. I know people can reach you directly for personal consultation, but if probably through your organization you can approach sports organizations, coaches with some literature on nutrition, on sports nutrition, this could be very helpful. People tend to think of nutrition when teams, nutritionists and dietitians, when teams have been formed and preparing for major championship. And the duration is so short that, of course, there is an impact, but it's not quite significant. Because if you have an athlete for 2 weeks, I don't think you can change much when they're just approaching competition. So if there's a way you can reach out and have some materials, would be very grateful.
Thank you for that, Coach. What I know currently, this is in the works. There is work ongoing towards coming up with guidelines, basic guidelines for people with regard to sports nutrition for various sports. So it's currently in the pipeline. So very soon, this will be out. I know there's some work going towards that. So currently, as of now, we are trying to engage sports organization coaches with SportsWave, whereby if you have and you feel the need to, then we would come and be able to do a basic and work with your athletes in the nutrition field as well. And yes, I totally agree with what you have raised, that most people will approach nutritionists and dietitians weeks to a major competition. However, the work should start early, and we are trying to get this out there as much as possible. So thank you for that particular issue. This is well noted.
Thank you.
And I hope this will be a localized program, foods that can be easily found in our context.
Yes, it's currently a working group by Kenyans for Kenyans. So yes.
All right, or and other African countries, more or less the same food.
Yes,
Yeah.
trying to bring things closer home.
Yep. All right, if there's no any other concern, is that let me see, there's something on the chat. Oh, that's Tom. Okay. If there's nothing for the presenter, let me take this opportunity to end this session. The recordings will be shared and the presentation also will be shared on our website. Thank you for making time and have a good evening.
Thank you as well, and have a lovely evening too.
Thank you.